Olandria Carthen's cover shoot had barely been published when whispers about how her publicist had angled to get her that cover for Harper's Bazaar Vietnam started swirling. And they missed entirely the point about how you can use photography to build your social power. Especially as a Black woman, you need to understand how to utilize the power of iconography and style, because guess what? Other people centuries ago figured out how to use that against you. You can give yourself some credit in that you probably understand that no one has a neutral image of you. But people do look at you and they see you through a societal memory. What are you supposed to do if that societal memory was trained on thousands of limited images of people like you? And if you think this is just about a fashion shoot, you can scroll. Or you can think about how this is connected to our society's economic engine and how that was originally powered through unpaid for forced labor by your ancestors. And that was justified through image making. It would be one thing if those images just stayed in museums or they affected people if they picked up the books and read them. But we're also talking about an online sexually explicit materials industry that is incredibly popular and that is being consumed by millions of people every day. Sexually explicit materials, they present gender and ethnicity in a specific way that fits a narrative, and these are sexual and social scripts. So the past isn't just looking at you, the present is too. And there is a difference between looking at someone and seeing someone. And what we see when we look, that is socially constructed. You watched this summer as Olandria had this rise from Love Island's quote unquote dark, tragic reject to the beloved runner-up who ended up winning the whole thing, becoming the people's princess. And that rise was not because of the show's production savvy, but because of how she presented and styled herself. Quite frankly, how she placed herself in spite of the show. Alandria knew when she walked onto this set that she possessed naturally what money cannot buy. She has this undeniable look and way of carrying herself that is high fashion. She's a newcomer operating in an entertainment industry that knows that the way to connect new viewers to new people is to go down to reductionist old tropes. These quick reductions, they don't work for Black women. Critically, she used affordable, knockout looks to play against that narrative. This woman had a careful strategy. Jim Byers at the Met calls this the Velvet Hammer. Zelda Wynn, who created the iconic Playboy bunny jumpsuit and some incredible pieces for Ella Fitzgerald and Joyce Bryant, she was the one who was able to get certain Black women into places that had not been segregated yet. 10 years before the civil rights movement opened these doors for people, these women in entertainment created wealth and power for themselves through fashion. Ella Fitzgerald is an undeniable talent, but there were certain venues where there was a look and an expectation that she knew she didn't fit. So she came on the offensive with a new design strategy that reintroduced her and shattered expectations. They decentered the viewer enough to give themselves time to reintroduce themselves. You don't even have to ever be on the Love Island villa to use this move. Alandria never looked like what production was putting her through. And that was armor, especially with certain castmates who were lighter skinned, who assumed that they were going to have better romantic options than Alandria. Long after Taylor played in Alandria's face, she kept consistent with the runway and glamour look. And that kept undercutting the tragedy that everybody wanted to put on her. It made Taylor's excuse for how he was handling her nonsensical. Did she need $9,000 custom designer pieces to do this? No. She knew her body, she knew what she looked like, and she knew what to work with using what she could afford. It wasn't scattered. What she had access to was affirming the look and the future career she wanted beyond Love Island. And that care and that attention that she put on herself, it underscored the hopes and dreams she continued to hold on to for herself. And it was easier to see her as a future model because there she was, walking around the pool in those heels. She already had the oil on her skin. She was showing up to those challenges prepared. And her social media footprint, long before she had a team monetizing her and surrounding her and making a business out of her, it affirmed that too. This was her holding firm to how she saw herself and how she wanted the world to see herself, and how that was locked in before the online narratives and commentary rolled in. We live in this unique period of time where the people who come from the people who were historically oppressed and up to present day to consolidate power and money for a certain group of people, those people now have access to something they didn't have in the past, which is the ability to make images of themselves. This used to be a privilege for the wealthy and the landed, or you might become the subject of some rich person if they looked at you, and then you didn't really have control over what that final product was. You're either employing painters or portrait masters or sculptors, or you had to have the means to study that craft yourself. These pieces of art, they were costly, they took time, they had to telegraph status and power and position in society. And have humans changed? No, today we're doing the same thing. We see the reactions when people look at us when we're in places that they think we're not supposed to be. You see young, beautiful blonde Oxford women posting about their doctoral achievements, getting hated on and dragged and asked about their fertility status. There are groups of triggered men who are anxious over their own mediocre prospects, dogging on Black women who are getting educated. We see the gorgeous Black business owners getting picked apart when they walk in to get their first Birkin. We see people intentionally take pictures of themselves in front of certain restaurants or certain cars to telegraph something. And yeah, you can't purchase or photograph your way out of oppression. Not everyone has the same access to everything. And quite cynically and realistically, our access to being able to play with images or use social media companies' products to do that, it's not because people decided to give it to us freely. It's because they realize that's profitable. Handing more people the ability to amass a following or have a platform is lucrative. For Black women in America, this widespread ability to photograph ourselves, not at labor, not in the fields, but at rest or enjoying something or in couture, that's new. Part of why you see entertainment media or people that you run into struggling to catch up with where you actually are is because the canon of images of Black women has not caught up to reality. It's barely been updated to match our freedom that is still contested freedom. Alandria's Harper Bazaar shoot, it introduces her as a woman with softness and power. In my family, we talk about clothes that are valet clothes. They're tight, they're glamorous, they're complicated in ways that just do not permit labor. They are clearly worn for women at rest, women who are going to be helped out of the car. Fabric and the composition of the outfit is designed to showcase the woman. She is supposed to be seen and served. Psychologically, when we view Olandria in these type of clothes with this kind of grand background, we are being taught how to see her. We are being told how to view her and who she is. Olandria and her creative team, the visual production behind this, they are introducing her to the world. They are placing these images in a line of other images. The reason we even saw Olandria as an underdog in the first place is not because of fact, but because of fiction. Because it's a fact that Olandria is a beauty. It's racist fiction that leads other contestants to think that because they would pass the brown paper bag test that they have more choices than she does. Clearly, does dress override every assumption that the brain fills in? No. Black women are still asked where the coat check is at the opera. You have Latino women being mistaken for nannies all the time. There are tall white girls in lab coats that are seen as wasting their potential instead of modeling. Are any of those professions bad? No. Is limiting somebody to your small single story of them not appropriate? Yeah. But visuals, for all our stubborn biases, they are malleable. In March of 2023, in Gallery 521 of the Met Museum, Fictions of Emancipation was put on display. Displayed were Western sculptures across a variety of artists that were tied to the end of the transatlantic slave trade. The same one that brought Olandria and a lot of our ancestors to America or the Caribbean in the first place. These sculptures, along other found objects from the fine great houses of Europe, they were about Black people. They communicated ideas about those who were enslaved and freed. Ideas that spread through the propagation of images because there were also cheaper ways that people could have access to these forms of art. Maybe you couldn't get the sculpture in marble, but you could get it in bronze, or maybe you could get a sketching or an etch of something. And these pieces, they would go viral. And what these pieces told were who were these people that were found in these lands that we were trying to colonize. The story of those people and why they needed to be enslaved or why they needed to be freed was, yes, done through law, but it was first done through visuals. The exhibit also pointed out that the abolition and the emancipation of these people was not clean. The pieces themselves tell a story of pity and patronization. There were various forms of abject wretchedness that allowed and justified white intervention. And in this modern moment, we have the social memory of ghettos, the so-called bad parts of town, the urban failing school, and modern wretchedness of mass incarceration. These are not understood of the product of careful legislation by the federal government that was enforced by white terrorism. These are not seen as the products of generations of white supremacy. They are not proof of racist legislation still at work, or economic choices made by people in power. They are seen as the product of Black inferiority and sloth. So when people look at Black people, they see a lot of things. Media from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and even the 80s. And yet, Edmonia Lewis in the 1800s and Carl Walker of our time making sculptures that dare to look back at the gaze that tries to define them. They're defying this and this. I don't get the snark about the choice to go after Harper's Bazaar Vietnam. This is a tradition we need to lean into. With every image, episode, or piece of art that we put out about ourselves, we challenge fictions of ourselves. We move closer to articulating an emancipation that will no longer be fictional. First affirm it here, then make choices that express that. Get your velvet hammer, add to the canon.